What if I told you that the holiest sanctuary in history was built by the hands of hell, and that King Solomon, the wisest man to ever live, was actually commanding a legion of 72 bloodthirsty demons to do his bidding? Forget the peaceful image of a king on his throne. Picture instead a desperate ruler standing in the shadows, clutching a forbidden ring as the Archangel Michael descends from the heavens to wage an apocalyptic war against the very spirits Solomon unleashed. This is the terrifying secret history they never taught you in church, a saga buried in ancient manuscripts where the line between saint and sorcerer blurs, and where a single moment of weakness nearly destroyed the kingdom of God. We are about to unlock the forbidden scrolls that reveal the ultimate spiritual showdown. So before we step into the darkness, make sure to smash that like button, subscribe to Bible Mysteries Africa, and share this video right now to join our community of truth seekers, because the story you are about to hear will shatter everything you thought you knew about the battle between heaven and the abyss. Imagine, if you will, a king so anointed by the living God that his very name became the definition of wisdom. A man whose mind was sharper than a two-edged sword, and whose wealth was so vast that silver was considered as common as the stones in the streets of Jerusalem. Yet beneath this glittering surface of gold and glory, beneath the royal robes of Solomon, the son of David, lay a terrifying secret that the Sunday schools never taught us, a secret buried deep within the forbidden scrolls of history that reveals a man walking a razor's edge between the holiest light of heaven and the darkest pits of hell. We are talking about Solomon, the man who built the temple of the Lord, yet hidden in the shadows of his legacy is the chilling truth that this great man of God, this vessel of divine wisdom, was entangled in a power so dangerous that it required the intervention of the Archangel Michael himself. For tradition tells us that Solomon possessed a mysterious ring, the seal of God, which gave him the terrifying authority to command not just the armies of men, but the invisible forces of darkness, specifically 72 distinct demons who represented every sin, every sickness, and every curse that plagues humanity today. Before we unlock this mystery, I invite you to join our growing family of truth seekers by subscribing to Bible Mysteries Africa, smashing that like button, and sharing this message to spread the light. Because what we are uncovering today is not just a story, it is a spiritual mirror for your own life. Picture the weight on Solomon's shoulders, the son of David, the man who killed giants and unified a kingdom, a young king who knelt in humility and asked God not for long life or the death of his enemies, but for wisdom to lead God's people, a request that touched the heart of the Father so deeply that he poured out a spirit of understanding unlike anything the world had ever seen, drawing queens like the Queen of Sheba from the ends of the earth just to witness his brilliance. However, my brothers and sisters, we must understand that great power brings great temptation, for the enemy does not attack those who are empty, he attacks those who are full of potential. And it was in this high place of authority that Solomon's story takes a dark and twisting turn, as described in the ancient testament of Solomon, where he used the divine ring to bind these 72 demons, forcing these spirits of malice, these architects of destruction who whisper lust, greed, jealousy, and rage into the hearts of men, to bow down and serve the purpose of Jehovah. Can you imagine the scene, the irony that shakes the spiritual realm, where the most holy sanctuary on earth, the temple of God, was being constructed not just by the faithful hands of men, but by the forced labor of groaning, snarling demons who were bound by the power of the ring to cut the stones and carry the timber? It sounds like a victory. It sounds like the ultimate triumph of good over evil, compelling the darkness to serve the light. Yet here lies the danger that every one of us must heed today, for these demons did not submit because they were changed. They did not obey because they loved God. They submitted only because they were in chains, and deep within their twisted spirits, they watched Solomon, they studied him, and they waited with the patience of a predator for the moment the king's heart would drift, for the moment his connection to God would falter. Each of these 72 spirits represented a weakness in the human condition, one causing blindness and disease, another stirring up strife between brothers, another twisting the minds of kings with pride, and another tempting men to abandon their families for fleeting pleasures, essentially mirroring the very battles we fight in our daily lives in Nigeria, in our businesses, in our marriages, and in our secret thoughts. Solomon thought he was the master. He thought he could control the fire without getting burned. But the word of God warns us that pride comes before a fall. And slowly, almost imperceptibly, the wisest man who ever lived began to compromise, allowing foreign wives into his heart, women who brought with them their strange gods, their idols, and their abominations. It did not happen overnight, for sin is rarely a sudden cliff, but rather a slow slope. A small shrine built here for peace, a little incense burned there for diplomacy, a minor bowing of the knee to keep a wife happy, until the man who once spoke with God was now bowing before wood and stone. As his heart turned away from the source of his strength, the spiritual covering began to lift, the divine seal on the ring began to dim, and the chains that held the 72 demons began to loosen, creating a terrifying shift in the atmosphere as the very entities he thought he owned began to realize that their jailer had lost his keys. This is the question that should haunt us and drive us to our knees in prayer. If Solomon, with all his wisdom, with all his anointing, could be deceived by the subtle creep of compromise, what makes us think we can play with sin and survive? The demons were not just building a temple. They were waiting for the builder to fall, proving that you cannot use the devil's tools to do God's work forever, and you cannot harbor secret sins without them eventually breaking out to destroy you. This story is a wake-up call for every believer, every father, every leader watching this right now, reminding us that our true power does not come from our titles, our money, or our past victories, but from a heart that stays totally surrendered to God. For the moment we think we are standing strong is the moment we must be most careful lest we fall. As the shadows lengthened over Jerusalem and the whispers of the 72 grew louder in the spiritual realm, the stage was set for a confrontation that would require the intervention of heaven's greatest warrior, Michael, because when a man of destiny loses his way, God in his mercy does not abandon him to the enemy, but sends help to fight the battles we can no longer fight for ourselves. So I ask you today, what are the demons lurking in the shadows of your life, waiting for you to slip? And are you ready to humble yourself before the King of Kings to ensure that your temple remains holy? Or will you let the compromise of this world shatter your destiny? Stay with us as we dive deeper into this mystery, for the battle is just beginning. And if you want to arm yourself with the truth, make sure you are subscribed to Bible Mysteries Africa, for we are uncovering the secrets that liberate the soul. And now, my brothers and sisters, the legend takes us into waters so deep and so dangerous that heaven itself could no longer stand by and watch. For the situation in Jerusalem had grown so immense, so terrifying, that God had to send his greatest warrior, the Archangel Michael, the very same angel who cast Lucifer out of glory, to step into the physical realm and intervene. Stop and let that sink into your spirit for a moment. For we are not talking about a minor skirmish or a small spiritual disagreement. We are talking about the commander of the heavenly hosts descending to face the very spirits that Solomon, a mortal man, had once dared to bind, which begs the question that should shake us to our core. What kind of power did these 72 demons possess that it wasn't just a common angel sent to handle them, but Michael himself, the Prince of War? The story of Solomon ceases to be merely a tale of wisdom and gold and transforms into a catastrophic battle between the kingdom of light and the abyss of darkness, all because a man who was once the apple of God's eye allowed his heart to drift away from the shore of obedience. I want you to close your eyes and picture the scene in the palace, where Solomon sits alone, surrounded by the glow of incense and the shimmering gold of his father's kingdom. Yet the ring that once blazed with the fire of God's authority now sits dull and lifeless in his trembling hand, while from the dark corners of the royal chamber a sound begins to rise, a low, mocking, demonic laughter that chills the blood, signaling that the 72 are preparing to break their chains, while somewhere beyond the veil of this world, Michael unshackles his sword of living light to prepare for war. Let us step boldly into the darkness to understand the gravity of this moment. For the Temple of Solomon was already built, its white stones gleaming under the sun, its walls echoing with the chants of the priests, and the smoke of sacrifices rising like a holy perfume to heaven. Yet hidden beneath this beauty, in the spiritual underbelly of the city, the 72 demons were stirring, and according to the ancient texts, these were not just mindless monsters or chaotic shadows, but organized, intelligent, and deliberate principalities, each with a name, each with a purpose, and each with a specific assignment to corrupt the sons of men. Does that not sound like the enemy we face today? An enemy that does not always come with fangs and claws, but slips into our lives through the cracks of our character, whispering, tempting, and planting seeds of destruction. The legends say that when Solomon had the ring, he interrogated them one by one, forcing them to reveal their nature, and their confessions are a mirror to our own struggles in this modern world. For one demon confessed that his sole purpose was to stir anger in the hearts of brothers until they spilled each other's blood. Another admitted that he whispered into the ears of wives to abandon their husbands for lust, breaking the covenant of marriage, while yet another took pleasure in filling the minds of kings and leaders with paranoia and pride until they waged wars that destroyed thousands. Think about it, my friends. These were not just ghosts. They were the personification of envy, greed, despair, and rage, the very spirits that are still roaming the earth today, causing blindness where there should be sight, tormenting children with fevers, whispering thoughts of suicide to men standing on the edge of cliffs, and turning the hearts of merchants to greed so that they exploit the poor. Perhaps the most chilling confession came from a demon who said he lingered not in the brothels or the marketplaces, but around the holy altars, saying, "Where incense is burned, there I make men's prayers empty, for I twist their words before they reach the heavens." And I ask you, does that not strike fear into your heart, to think that evil can lurk even in our moments of worship, turning our distraction and insincerity into a weapon against us? Solomon, in his prime, catalogued these 72 voices of corruption, and with the seal of God, forced them into labor, making them lift the heavy stones for the temple, dig the deep foundations, and carve the cedar wood. But we must ask ourselves, did he truly have power over them? Or was he merely holding a pack of wolves by the ears, keeping them in a jar like venomous snakes waiting for the lid to be removed? For while they worked, they hated him. They cursed his lineage, they studied his habits, and they waited with the patience of eternity for the king to slip, knowing that the ring was only as powerful as the faith of the man wearing it. And slip he did, not all at once, but slowly, as his foreign wives brought their idols into the holy city, and Solomon, the builder of God's house, began to allow shrines to rise in the hills of Jerusalem. A small altar here for peace, a shrine there for diplomacy, a compromise here to please a queen, until every prayer he offered to a false god became a crack in the prison wall. Every burnt offering to an idol loosened the lock on the abyss, and the demons, sensing the dimming of the seal, began to laugh. Can you imagine the tension in the spiritual atmosphere as the bonds loosened bit by bit, as the whispers grew into roars, and Solomon, once clear-minded, became restless and shadowed? The texts tell us that the moment came, whether the ring was stolen or dropped in weakness, the seal was broken, and the 72 rose up in a terrifying explosion of darkness, some taking the forms of beasts, with heads of lions and bodies of serpents, others appearing as twisted men with eyes of fire, and some as deceptively beautiful figures hiding poison, proving that the devil often comes dressed in desire. Chaos erupted in Jerusalem as one demon filled the sky with a foul stench like smoke. Another slithered through the palace, confusing the guards until they turned their swords on each other. And another planted fear in the hearts of the people that God had abandoned them, causing the holy city to tremble, as the very spirits who built the temple now sought to tear it down from the inside out. Solomon stood powerless, staring at his empty hand, hearing the mocking voices of the hell he had unleashed, realizing too late that his wisdom could not save him without his obedience. It was then, when all hope seemed lost, that the cries of Israel reached the throne of grace, and God, who is slow to anger and abounding in mercy, sent his champion, Michael, the warrior who stands for his people. Can you picture the night sky swirling with shadows and the shrieks of the damned? And then suddenly, a light brighter than the sun tearing through the clouds like a bolt of lightning as Michael descended, his sword of fire blazing, his eyes burning with holy judgment, the air itself trembling at his presence. This was the beginning of a confrontation that would shake the foundations of the earth, not a battle of chariots or spears, but a clash of spiritual powers where the sounds of shrieking demons met the thunder of heaven. And before we witness the outcome of this apocalyptic duel, I urge you, if you want to be armed with the truth and understand the mysteries of the kingdom, make sure you are subscribed to Bible Mysteries Africa. Hit that like button to support the work of God, and share this video because the truth we are revealing is the weapon you need for your own battles. The moment the seal was broken, the spiritual atmosphere over Jerusalem shifted violently, plunging the holy city into a darkness so thick it could be felt. For the 72 demons were no longer servants bound in chains, but masters of chaos unleashed upon the earth, twisting the shadows above the palace into monstrous shapes that blotted out the stars and strangled the moonlight, causing dogs to howl in unnatural terror and children to wake screaming in their beds as the ancient protection over Israel seemed to evaporate in an instant. Inside the temple, the priests clutched the horns of the altar, their hearts pounding as the sacred fire flickered and died as if smothered by the breath of hell itself. While in the palace, Solomon, the Lion of David's line, sat slumped on his ivory throne, his eyes hollow and haunting, staring at the empty finger where the ring of authority once sat, feeling for the first time in his glorious reign the crushing weight of absolute powerlessness, because his wisdom, once sharper than any two-edged sword, was now clouded by the fog of compromise, and his heart, once a blazing furnace for God, was now heavy with the cold ash of idolatry. The demons knew it, and they circled him like apex predators sensing blood in the water, their voices hissing from the corners of the room, mocking him with the truth that cuts deeper than any knife, whispering, "You thought you could rule us, King of Israel. You used us to build your legacy, but now the chains are gone, your wisdom has failed you, and your God has turned his face away," leaving Solomon to tremble before the very creatures he once commanded, ready to see everything he had built torn down stone by stone. But my brothers and sisters, we serve a God who does not sit idle when the destiny of his people is threatened by the abyss. For somewhere beyond the veil of the earthly sky, in the realm of unapproachable light, the Archangel Michael began to stir, the warrior whose very name means, "Who is like God?" A name that stands as an eternal rebuke to every prideful spirit that dares to exalt itself against the Most High, reminding the cosmos that when Lucifer declared, "I will be like the Most High," Michael's existence was the answer that silenced the rebellion. Now, as the 72 spirits sought to corrupt the heart of God's chosen nation, Michael was called once again, and the legends say his descent was not a gentle arrival, but a cataclysmic event. Like a meteor of holy fire tearing through the heavens, a light so bright that the people of Jerusalem fell to their knees, thinking the day of judgment had arrived, for he came not as a messenger with a scroll, but as a champion with a sword. His armor shimmered like molten gold, reflecting the uncreated fire of the throne room. his wings vast and terrible, stretched wide to stir the air like a hurricane, and in his hand blazed a sword not forged by human blacksmiths, but fashioned from divine lightning, a weapon capable of splitting not just flesh and bone, but the very essence of spirit and soul. The demons shrieked as he landed in the heart of the city, the ground trembling beneath his feet, for they remembered that sword. They remembered the sting of its edge from the days they were cast out of glory, and though some tried to laugh and mock to hide their fear, their voices cracked as Michael's voice rolled through the hills like thunder, declaring, "By the command of the Most High, I stand against you." The battle that erupted was unlike anything written in the history books of men, for as the first demon surged forward, a nightmare creature with the body of a lion and the wings of a vulture roaring to shake the palace foundations, Michael did not flinch but raised his blade and with a single stroke of purity split the beast in two, dissolving its form into smoke and ash. Yet for every demon that fell, 10 more surged forward in a chaotic wave of malice. One demon appeared with the face of a beautiful woman, trying to weave illusions to entrap the Archangel's mind. Another spoke with the voice of 1,000 armies, trying to confuse and overwhelm his senses, and another moved like a suffocating shadow, trying to smother the light of his sword. But Michael was unmoved, his focus absolute, his light cutting through every illusion, his voice silencing every confusion, and his fire consuming every shadow that dared to approach. The people of Israel, hiding in their homes, clutching their children, listened to the unearthly sounds of the clash, the ringing of a flaming sword against dark powers, the wails of spirits being undone, and the earth shaking as powers beyond human comprehension fought for the soul of the nation right outside their doors. Understand this deeper meaning, for this was not just a physical fight. It was a spiritual showdown where each demon represented a specific vice, a specific sin, a specific corruption that plagues humanity. When Michael struck down the demon of lust, it was heaven declaring that perversion would not rule God's people. When he silenced the demon of lies, it was God saying that deception would not drown out his truth. When he crushed the demon of fear, it was a proclamation that faith is the currency of the kingdom. But make no mistake, the battle was brutal, for the 72 pressed him with the fury of centuries of imprisonment, clawing, hissing, and roaring until the night was filled with chaos. And though Michael stood unshaken, the sheer number was overwhelming, representing the overwhelming nature of sin when we try to fight it alone. It was then, the story says, that Michael lifted his voice to the heavens, not in defeat, but in command, and the hosts of angels answered his call, filling the skies above Jerusalem with a sound like a rushing mighty wind as the heavens tore open to reveal ranks of angels, shining like stars, each bearing weapons of light, an army of fire descending to stand with their captain. The demons howled in rage and despair, for they had escaped the ring of a man only to face the armies of the living God. And as Michael raised his sword high, blazing brighter than the moon, he declared, "By the Lord Almighty, you are bound." And the tide turned decisively as the angels drove the darkness back, chaining the spirits in fetters of light, their cries echoing into the void as they were cast, according to some legends, into the depths of the Euphrates River or into pits of darkness to await the final judgment. Solomon watched it all from his balcony, his heart broken by his failure, yet overwhelmed with gratitude that God had not abandoned him to the consequences of his own pride. Tears streaming down his face as he whispered, "Great is the Lord and greatly to be praised," realizing that his deliverance came not from his cleverness, but from God's mercy. Michael stood before the king, radiant and fierce, his eyes burning with holy fire, yet his voice calm and piercing as he delivered the lesson that would define the rest of Solomon's life. "Solomon, wisdom is nothing without obedience. Your crown cannot protect you. Your ring cannot save you. Only faithfulness to the Most High keeps you safe." And with that, he lifted his wings and vanished in a blaze of light, leaving the city silent and the demons gone. This legendary encounter is not just a story of the past, it is an echo of the eternal clash between light and darkness, a reminder that even the wisest man who ever lived, Solomon, blessed with wealth and splendor, could not manage the forces of darkness on his own, proving that human strength has a limit and that we all reach moments where we need help from above. It forces us to ask ourselves if Solomon needed Michael, if the king of Israel needed the intervention of heaven to fight his battles, how much more do we need to stop relying on our own understanding and start leaning on the power of God? Michael's role was not just to swing a sword, it was to show us that when the enemy comes in like a flood, the Spirit of the Lord will raise a standard against him, and that no matter how deep the shadows, the light of God is always ready to descend and fight for those who humble themselves. So what does the Archangel Michael truly represent in this ancient mystery? He is not just a warrior with a flaming sword. He is the living symbol of God's intervention when our human strength runs dry, standing as a testament that no matter how wise, how rich, or how powerful we become, there will always come a night when we cannot save ourselves. Consider the tragedy of the ring, the seal of Solomon, a tool of immense power that allowed a mortal man to bind the forces of hell, yet in the end, Solomon was not defeated by the demons he enslaved in chains, but by the demons he nurtured in his own heart, the demons of pride, the demons of lust, and the silent, creeping demon of compromise. This forces us to ask the most dangerous question of all. Which enemy is truly to be feared, the spirits attacking us from the outside, or the corruption growing on the inside? Michael's battle reveals that while we can rebuke the devil with authority, the hardest war is the one we fight against our own desires, the slow erosion of our faith that happens when no one is watching, and that is exactly where Solomon stumbled, proving that anointing without character is a recipe for disaster. But the beauty of this legend is that God did not leave him to die in the dark, and he will not leave you either. For Michael's arrival is a reminder that when our wisdom fails, God's mercy steps in to fight the battles we are too weak to win. I want you to close your eyes and see it. Michael standing radiant and fierce before the horde of 72 spirits, commanding the demons of poverty, the demons of sickness, the spirits of delay and despair to bow not to a man, but to the living God. Now, look at your own life and tell me, what are the 72 demons circling your destiny today? They may not be monsters with wings, but perhaps they are the addictions you cannot break, the fear that paralyzes your dreams, the anger that burns in your home, or the secret sins that keep whispering that you are not good enough. If God sent Michael to stand for Solomon in his weakest moment, then believe me when I tell you that he is sending his protection to stand for you right now, assuring you that when the shadows rise and the road seems blocked, you are never fighting alone, for the host of heaven is on your side.